Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a close look at the nationwide U.S. housing forecast for 2025 and 2026.
That's right. We've got a fresh forecast document just out this month, July 2025. Lots of specific economic projections in there.
Exactly. And our job today really is to pull out the key insights, maybe some surprising numbers, and just give you a clear, concise picture of where things might be headed.
Because wading through all that data yourself,
Yeah,
it can be a bit
it
much.
really can. So we're trying to connect the dots for you.
Yeah.
And, one thing that jumped out right away
Uh-huh.
is how different the growth rates look for new versus existing home sales. It's quite a contrast.
It really is. And that points towards some interesting dynamics under the surface.
So what does that tell us? Let's unpack that.
Well, that's the core question, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
we're dealing with projections here, obviously. It's a 2-year window.
Right, into potential shifts.
Potential shifts in a market that's been, well, unpredictable lately, to say
Yeah.
the least. And while the overall trend looks, generally positive, the real story, like you said, is in those details, those nuances.
Especially comparing different parts of the market.
Exactly. How different segments might perform.
Okay, so let's dive into those specifics. Home sales projections. Where should we start? Existing homes.
Yeah, let's start there. They make up the bulk of the market after all.
Okay, so the forecast shows uh, a modest plus 3% increase in existing home sales for 2025.
Right. Slow start, maybe.
Yeah, reasonable. But then look at 2026. It jumps to plus 14%.
14%. That's a big acceleration.
It feels like a huge leap, doesn't it? Especially compared to that 3%. What's behind that kind of explosive rebound for existing homes specifically?
That's a great question. And that 14%, it's not just a number, right? It suggests something's changing significantly.
Like what?
Well, think about the rate lock-in effect we've talked about before.
Ah, right. People sitting on those super low rates from a few years back.
Exactly. They've been hesitant to sell and face much higher rates.
Yeah.
This forecast seems to imply that as rates, maybe tick down a bit.
Which the forecast does predict later on. We'll get to that.
Right. As rates ease, more of that pent-up supply, those existing homes, might finally come onto the market.
So it's an unlocking of inventory?
Precisely. An unlocking of existing inventory. Combine that with ongoing buyer demand, and you get the potential for that kind of recovery, that surge in sales. It's like pressure building up and then releasing.
Okay, that rate lock explanation makes a lot of sense for existing homes. But like we said at the start, that picture looks very different for new construction.
Very different.
Let's look at those numbers. New home sales. Forecast shows basically flat for 2025, plus 0%.
Essentially, yeah. No growth projected there for next year.
And then only plus 3% in 2026.
Just 3%.
Which feels low, considering how much we hear about the need for more housing supply, the underlying demand. Why wouldn't builders be ramping up more? Why the slower pace compared to existing homes?
Yeah, it's a critical question. And the answer is, well, it's complicated for builders.
Okay.
Existing homes can sort of react faster if rates change, homeowners decide to list. But new construction, they've got a whole different set of constraints.
Like what kind of constraints?
Well, even if demand is strong, builders are still dealing with labor shortages in many areas. That slows things down.
Still. Okay.
Yeah, and material costs, while maybe not at their absolute peak, are still elevated. Plus, finding land that's ready to build on, especially in desirable locations, that's tough.
Right, the land issue.
And permits, regulations, the actual time it takes to build, new supply just can't turn on a dime like existing inventory potentially can.
So the forecast reflects those ongoing supply-side bottlenecks for new homes.
Exactly. Those constraints are keeping that growth more restrained, even with demand out there.
Okay, so that explains the contrast in sales volume. But what about prices? What people actually pay? That's always a big question, isn't it?
Always.
Let's look at median home prices. The forecast here, it's plus 1% in 2025. Pretty modest.
Very modest, yeah.
And then climbing to plus 4% in 2026.
So, again, an acceleration, but maybe not, the double-digit craziness we saw before.
Right. So what does this tell us? Gradual appreciation.
I think that's the key takeaway. Gradual but accelerating appreciation. It suggests maybe a more sustainable market path.
Not a runaway train, but not falling off a cliff either.
Exactly. Steady increases, particularly heading into 2026, which, for you listening, could be seen as reassuring. It signals some stability, some measured growth.
But does it solve affordability? A 4% increase is still an increase.
That's a very fair point.
Yeah.
It implies that while the market's strengthening those affordability challenges, they're likely to stick around, especially in certain areas.
Makes sense. And speaking of affordability, let's talk mortgage rates. We hinted at this.
The big one.
Yeah. The forecast shows an average of 6.7% in 2025.
Still quite high, historically speaking, compared to recent years.
But then it drops to 6.0% on average in 2026.
Okay, that's a fairly significant projected drop.
What's the impact of that drop? How crucial is that piece to this whole forecast?
Oh, it's absolutely critical. That projected fall to 6% in 2026. That's probably underpinning a lot of the other projections we're seeing.
Why is it so important?
Well, think about it. Lower rates directly reduce monthly payments for buyers. That makes homes more affordable. Simple as that.
Opens the door for more people.
Exactly. It expands the pool of potential buyers who can qualify for a loan and afford the payments. It really fuels demand.
So it supports the higher sales figures we talked about.
Absolutely. And it also supports those rising home prices because more people can bid. It's arguably the single biggest lever that could shift the market balance like this forecast suggests.
And what's the thinking behind why rates might drop? Is it about inflation, the Fed?
The forecast likely assumes the Federal Reserve might start, easing its monetary policy stance.
Yeah.
Perhaps inflation cools down enough, maybe the job market looks stable.
Okay, let's talk about that job market connection then. Because the housing market doesn't exist on its own, right?
Not at all. It's deeply tied to the broader economy.
So the forecast includes job growth numbers, 1.6 million new jobs predicted for 2025.
Right.
And that increases to 2.0 million new jobs in 2026.
A pretty solid number, and again, note the acceleration into 2026.
So how does that connect back to housing? What's the link?
Well, it's fundamental, really. Those job gains, especially the increase into 2026, they suggest a pretty healthy labor market overall.
Which means?
Which means more people working, more people feeling secure in their jobs, hopefully seeing some wage growth. And that translates directly into consumer confidence.
Confidence to make big purchases, like a house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And purchasing power, too.
Yeah.
A strong job market gives people the financial footing they need to actually qualify for a mortgage and handle the payments long term.
So it's the foundation for housing demand.
Absolutely. Without that underlying economic strength, without people feeling secure financially, you wouldn't likely see the kind of strengthening in sales and prices that this forecast projects. It all works together.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together then. If we summarize this whole deep dive, the forecast seems to be painting a picture of, what, a gradually strengthening U.S. housing market.
I think that's fair. Strengthening in 2025 and then gaining more momentum in 2026.
And the key drivers seem to be that projected drop in mortgage rates,
Definitely a major factor.
combined with continued pretty solid job growth.
Right, providing that economic foundation.
And within that, it looks like existing home sales are really expected to lead the charge, especially in 2026 as that rate lock-in effect potentially eases.
Yeah, that unlocking of existing inventory seems key to the forecast's sales volume jump.
So it's not exactly a boom market returning, but maybe a steady thaw, a move towards more normal activity.
A steady thaw is a good way to put it. A gradual recovery, but with those important nuances between new and existing homes and prices rising steadily rather than sharply.
Okay, so wrapping up, maybe a final thought for our listeners to chew on.
Indeed. So if we consider these forecasts, particularly how much seems to hinge on existing homes becoming available as rates ease, here's something to think about. What does that imply for how long it might actually take for the overall housing supply, new and existing, to truly catch up with the underlying demand out there?
Good question. Because new construction is still lagging in this forecast.
Exactly. So even with these positive national trends, how might that supply-demand imbalance continue to shape your local market experience? The national picture is one thing.
But your neighborhood could feel quite different depending on that local supply situation.
Precisely. Something to keep an eye on, even as the broader market shows signs of strengthening.